spiritual light vehicle. This is about accessing the many worlds. From the physical body to our etheric bodies, we can access the halls of healing, the halls of knowledge. So it's about traveling, but we need to know the fundamentals of shape, of pure geometry, and really what spin is. It's when we spin these geometries that allows the activation to happen. So you can see this being of light standing inside this star tetrahedron. But to understand the star tetra, we need to understand what the Star of David is. The word Merkaba is literally composed of three separate words. The Mer is the light, the Ka is the spirit, and the Ba is your body. So this is integrating like the heavenly and earthly energy so that we can travel with our light body. But many people pronounce it as, there's three ways. There's Merkaba, there's Merkaba, and then there's the Hebrew language where they pronounce it the Merkava. So you can choose which way you like to use this word. It's a divine vehicle made entirely of light so that we can access the higher realms. Like I said, it's basically your chariot, and it can be many, many other shapes as well. So I've put together in this 30-minute presentation, I've got part one. There's three parts. Part one's on the Star of David, 2 interlacing triangles. There's a 24 Fibonacci code I want to explain that makes the Star of David, and it's a multicultural symbol. Part 2 is the star tetrahedron, which is about 2 interpenetrating, 2 interdigitating tetrahedra. We're going to look at the fire points in the solar system, the tetrahedral fire points, and our 8 original cells. And then we come to the final bit on part 3, which is the diamond light body. The secret of the star tetra is what's embedded inside of it. And we're going to do a little meditation, learning how to breathe into your heart. So this is part 1. We're going to look at basically some eye candy, 2 interlacing triangles. You can see what happens when we do recursive patterns with the Star of David, the 6-pointed star hexagon, and we make exquisite geometries. This is seen in many, many cultures. Most people are familiar, but what they don't know is that it's made up of alchemical symbols of triangles. So this is fire, upward triangle is the fire. The one pointing down is water. So the star tetrahedron is really a union of fire and water. In a way, it's a tantric symbol uniting opposites. And people in the past have made alphabets from all the specific angles of the Star of David. I don't want to focus on this, but just so you know the diverse knowledge that's embedded in the Star of David. I'm showing you here the impossible hexagram because we're going to shift from the 2D of interlocking triangles to get to what we call a 3-dimensional version of the Star of David. So this is a yantra. It just means power art, that which makes visible the invisible world. But my favorite form of the hexagon is not just a static line, but an over and under. It's called unicursal hexagram, where these 6 points are all interweaving as if the electrons are running without friction. So this is a very sacred shape that oddly enough, not many people are working with this unicursal hexagram, but it's one of my favorite shapes because we all know the 5-pointed star that basically starts from there and comes back and returns to itself. So I just want to show you some recursive patterning of the Star of David. If you take this Star of David and keep putting it within itself as it divides the circle into 6, we go from 1 star to 7 stars. This is like carbon 7 molecule, the 6 around the 1. And as you keep putting stars within the stars by reduction, we end up with 49 stars. There's 7 stars within the 7 circles. And so there you can see the Star of David pattern in here, the original star. But it can actually get more complex where you've got 343 stars, which is 7 cubed, or 7 to the 4th power. We end up with really exotic pattern. That's all just from the fundamental Star of David, which I like to refer to as the fingerprints of God. So this is what I call our source code. We're exploring symmetry that we can also use in our meditation so that we can use this knowledge to propel our Merkaba or Merkava. So I've put all this together in one diagram, the circle, triangle, Star of David, to these the complicated patterns. So we're moving from simplicity to complexity. And it's nice to see that the six-pointed star is a flower pattern. So this is part of the mathematics of nature. The seed of life is the 6 circles that all touch a center point, and this is fundamentally a cube. So when I talk about a cube, you can see here that this is a larger cube, but it has the 8 smaller cubelets that fundamentally make up the cube. So the 8 small cubes make up this 2 by 2 by 2 cube. So this is the starting point to understand the Merkaba, is that this is a cubic pattern. And I've shown that the Star of David is the shadow of a cube. If you had a wireframe cube and tilted it, you'd see the hexagon. And here I've shown you hexagons within hexagons within hexagons. So that code in there, 3 together, is called 6, 6, and a 6. So this is all the fundamental blueprint of creation. Metatron's cube extends 6 circles with another 6 circles around the center. We've got 1 plus 6 plus 6. We've got 13 circles now. And this creates the 5 platonic solids. It's a fundamental geometry for the multidimensional worlds. And the reason why we all resonate to the Star of David is that it exists in the Armenian culture, the Ethiopian, the Roman, Phoenician, Hindu, Mesopotamian, Bactrian, Egyptian, Japanese. In fact, many, many cultures that I haven't even mentioned have all ascribed and dedicated their knowledge and understanding of the universe through this star. So it's not just really a symbol for Israel, which they love and adore, but this is a multicultural symbol that everyone has used. So anthropomorphic means anthropos is man and morphic is shape. So when we make shapes out of using human design to make shapes, we have what we call anthropomorphic symbol design. So this is an exquisite 6 boys making the Star of David pattern, and here we have 6 women making another version of that. So just a little bit of mathematics to get us going is that the star tetrahedron, the 3-dimensional form of the star tetra is 2 tetrahedra, but see how the shadow makes the Star of David. So because the star tetrahedron here, this shape, the star tetrahedron, is made up of 24 triangles, equilateral triangles, and 24 edges. So this is the 8, what we call the 8 original cells. And the shadow of this shape is the Star of David. So I want to show you how the Star of David appears in what we call the Fibonacci sequence. So when we take the Fibonacci sequence, which goes 3, 5, 8, you add the 2 previous numbers, 5 and 8 is 13. You get a sequence that goes to infinity. We take away the number 9 from all these, reduce them down to single digits, and we get a 24 code. And the sum of all these numbers is 108. It's a 108 code, and I've put it into a circle. But I want to show you where the Star of David appears in this Fibonacci 24 code. So when we plot these numbers, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, on the circle, and we examine where all the ones are, we see that there's a triangle of 3 ones here, and if you're to explore where the 3 8s are, there's an inverted triangle. So compose together all the 1s and 8s in the 24 code of the Fibonacci sequence make the Star of David. So I just wanted to show you that I decided to put the 24 code into 3 rows of 8, and this revealed the internal symmetry. So when you study with me, I've got hundreds of examples of how these 24 codes create the Star of David patterns. And there's a lot more in between. The points in between the Star of David all add up to what's called a doubling sequence. So there's so much knowledge embedded within this. And when we look at the unicursal hexagram that I just introduced before, we can see that when we follow the 24 code and we go 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, this connects to what Tesla talked about. If you wanted to understand the mysteries of the universe, just study 3, 6, 9. So the unicursal hexagram is a superior pattern than the plain Star of David, which is kind of fractionated. So I'm advising everyone to work with this unicursal hexagram. So that was just part 1. I just wanted to introduce the 2 dimensions of what we're talking about, because now we're going to shift to the 3 dimensions before we get to the Merkaba. So this is going to look at what we call the interdigitating tetrahedra. So we need to know what a tetrahedron is, because we're shifting from 2D to 3D. So the triangle itself is the first shape that forms in 2D, but the first shape that forms in 3 dimensions that has volume is the tetrahedron. And the reason we love the tetrahedron is that if Magic Spider goes in here and joins the 4 triangle centers, it makes an inverted copy of itself. And that this inverted copy fits within, we'll call this the baby tetrahedron, fits within the mother tetrahedron 27 times. And if we keep doing this self-dual examination, it keeps making a smaller and smaller copy of itself, but it goes upright, reversed, which is kind of like an oscillation. It's a wave. So the tetrahedron is the fundamental building block of creation, and I wanted to thank Zoom for sending me all these beautiful structures so that we could illustrate what I'm talking about. So so essentially, when we put 2 triangles together, we're really looking at 2 tetrahedra. So the seed of life shows us that when all the 6 circles touch a central point, we're really forming the fundamental shape of a star tetrahedron, which is this shape here, the one I showed before. And this is like the atomic structure of salt. So this is a crystalline field, and it's a familiar shape that makes salt and quartz crystal. Quartz is this geometry too. It's all about storing memory. So that's why when we look at crystals, we know that a large crystal like this is hexagonal. If you count these points, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it's that hex shape of a crystal is what stores all the infinite data on our computers. So there's a connection between how we have to make peace with this technology, because technology is revealing the higher dimensional worlds. So the star tetrahedron is essentially a crystalline field of information, and we know that our third eye is composed of liquid crystals, as are many parts of our bodies, bones and teeth and hair and inside the ear. So this geometry sets up what I call a resonance within every cell of our body. And we're going to conclude later on with what happens when we spin this crystalline field. That's what the Merkaba is, but right now we're just examining some of the facets of the shape called the star tetrahedron. So I'd like to introduce you to the idea that if this was the Earth, if we had a sphere around the star tetrahedron, and we could actually examine what points on the Earth are on these 8 points. We know that the star tetra is like a cube, it has 8 corners, right? And where are those points on the Earth? So we know there's the North Pole and the South Pole that I'm holding here. That's the North and South Pole. But where are these other 6 points? So it just happens that upon the Tropic of Capricorn and Cancer, at 19.5 degrees from the equator, all these points of the tetrahedra lie on this 19.5 degrees. So you can see the star tetra, there's the Star of David's shadow. So we're going to look at those places, the north and south latitude at 19.5 degrees. So we can see that at all the fire points, this is what Plato called these fire points. He said that there's volcanoes and pyramids at all these points. So if you look at Hawaii and Mexico, the pyramids in Mexico City, in Hawaii, and in the ocean, there's underground volcanoes. I went to a big volcano in Vanuatu. I spent a month there on Tanna Island, where you can actually see the magma coming out of the volcano. But at the time, I didn't realize it was actually one of these fire points. So this is something to really get excited about, because the Mother Earth, she has a geometry. And when we're spinning, you see the Earth is spinning. So this sacred geometry is spinning all the time. But what happens if we were to look at the star tetrahedron inside the sun? And we would see that the fire points line up with what we call the sunspots. So we're familiar with that. If we were to put the star tetrahedron inside the Earth, you'd see inside Venus, say, you'd see that there are major volcano complexes on Venus called Alpha and Beta Regio, and they're also on these 19.5 degree latitude. So when we look in, say, at the Earth or a planet or the sun, we can see that there's a dynamic symmetry. So there's fields that are going around the planet, and also there are fields that are being created within the planet as well. These are called vortices, but the secret is that these are counter-rotating fields, and we need to know about counter-rotating fields, because that's the secret to when we look at the Merkaba. The Merkaba is about spinning, counter-rotating fields, just like what a pine cone does, but it does it in an intelligent way, like say in 813. It doesn't do it in equal spin. Nature does things in those Fibonacci numbers that we were talking about. So even though you're looking at the Star of David, there's internal geometry here based on the living maths of nature. So again, if we looked at the star tetrahedron on Mars, we already know that at 19.5 degrees above the equator, there's the vast Olympus Mons shield. It's like a giant volcano, a cone volcano. It's the largest mountain in our solar system, is right on that 19.5 degree. And on Jupiter, that people talk about the red spot, it's over here. It's on that 19.5 degree latitude south. So this is a great topic because you can go to every planet. You can look at Neptune, and Voyager 2 discovered in 1986 that there was a big blue spot on Neptune. It's right on that latitude. And Saturn has on its pole what we call a hexagon-shaped storm formation. So this is one of the most exciting photographs that we've been seeing from the solar system, but it's hexagonal because that's the shape of the cube. Richard Hoagland first recognized that there were pyramids on Mars and the face on Mars, and that this in a place called Cydonia on Mars, and that was also on the star tetrahedral fire points. But there's some controversy now. You can't find any information on Richard Hoagland right now. It's all been ridiculed. But so this is kind of like ancient knowledge, that this knowledge doesn't just pertain to Earth, it pertains to the solar system and to the galaxies. So it's a fundamental shape. So let's just look at some of the views of the star tetrahedron. You can see we're looking at a vertex point. So here we're looking at a face, but if I tilt it around, you're looking straight at that vertex point. So that's the geometry from the vertex or from the face. It's all about what we call critical tilt angles here. So that shape that I'm just holding here, we have a student here, Star, just she was doing a whole study just on the geometry of the cube, and we see the X shape here, the cross. This is another angle not at symmetry. This is off symmetry angle to show you the perspective of it. It's literally a cube with the 8 corners chopped off. So here's a cube. So if I went to all the midpoints here and chopped off the 8 cubes, I end up with another geometry called the cube octahedron. So the cube octahedron makes this shape, and I'm going to show you how the cube octahedron is related to the star tetrahedron. But this cube here, if I could open up this cube, there's a secret way of opening up this cube from inside here. I can put my finger in there and open this. If I was to open up this cube, I won't open. I just want to show you that there's a way of potentially opening this to form the Star of David again. So this actually folds down. If I was to fold this again, I'd form the cube. So the cube, as I said, is what stores memory. It's the cube of space. It contains all the root harmonics. So here the star of Tetra is formed from the flower of life, which has 144 components. This all relates to what I call the speed of light harmonics. So this is the geometry here from Zome tool, but we're going to explore in chapter 3 what's inside. There's a critical shape that's inside the star tetrahedron. So I just showed you a wireframe model, but if you look at this tilt angle, you can see 4 X's here, and you could say, well, here's the logo of a beer called Gold, the 4X Gold. Did the creators of this beer know of this sacred geometry that uses the 4 X's? You can see the 4 X's in this model here as well. It's just an idea. When we look at the tetrahedron, this is the tetrahedron here, and I'm spinning it around. If we added up all the angles of the 4 triangles, it's 4 lots of 180, it makes 720 degrees. So if star tetrahedron is 2 interpenetrating tetrahedra, then double 720 is 1440 degrees. And that's, in harmonic maths, we can drop the 0, we end up with a harmonic 144. Like I said, the flower of life has 144 parts, and the speed of light is 144,000 minutes of arc per grid second, which means when we drop the zeros, harmonic 144 is embedded in this Merkaba, in this star tetrahedral. That's why Mer means light, because we're talking about the speed of light. And in fact, if we added up all the degrees of all the 5 platonic solids, if we add them all up, it all adds up to 14,400. Drop the 2 zeros, you get harmonic 144. So there's something very unique about all these geometries. I said before that when we put 2-star tetrahedra together, like one there and join them, the space in between forms this cube octahedron, which is really called the 12 around the 1. So when we talk about the cube octahedron, here it is here, it's an alchemical shape that when we squash the cube octahedron, it makes the octahedron. It keeps squashing to form the pyramid. Pira means light, and here we are fire, and this is the tetrahedron, which is a symbol for fire. And even if we squashed it right down, we end up with the triangle, which is the basic building block of all creation. So that's all embedded within the 2 tetra touching to form the cube octahedron, the 12 around the 1. You can see star tetrahedron shown in crop circles in Wiltshire. That was in 2017. So when you have this Merkaba shape here and you place this geometry in your home, that's called feng shui, the art of placing things. It's our 8 original cells. So where we place it, it amplifies energy. It makes harmonious energy. So the star tetra, because it relates to our 8 original cells, this is our incarnation. What was it that you chose to do when you came to Earth? Have you detoured from your original mission? So the star tetrahedron is about getting back on track and claiming your power and the purpose and the light within you. So that's why these are very sacred shapes. There's a lot of mathematics to the Merkaba, which I will talk about in other when we do whole e-courses just on this. I just wanted to show you that the numbers 2, 8, 24 and 27. Remember 27 little tetra are locked within the mother tetrahedron. So these are all special coded numbers. Because when I mentioned the 8 corners of the star tetrahedron, that's the 8 tetrahedron, they're really the 8 spheres. So you can see the 8 spheres of your creation. So these are called the 8 original cells, which kind of means that originally when the 1 became the 2, we separated from source and the 2 became 4. So at one point the first shape you formed was a tetrahedron, the center of 4 spheres. So this is your unique geometry, your essence. You were a shape that stored all this memory. And then the 4, as you know, became the 8 cells. So that's why I'm talking about purpose and follow your light within, because you have all the memory of all your previous lives in your 8 original cells. And the centers of these 8 form the star tetrahedron. So I talk a lot about the 8 original cells. And you can see here that we're leading up to the chapter where we're going to spin our geometry. That's the Merkaba. It's based on what we call counter-rotating fields, but the spin must be in the golden ratio. So Kepler called this the stellar octangular. So stellar means star and octangular means 8, because Buddha made references to the subatomic particle. He called it the octakalappas. When he defined the smallest unit of atoms, he said that nature was 8-sided. So this fits in with the star tetrahedron. So then we got the cube within the cube. This is all hexagonal structure. The cube within the cube, as you know, is another grand secret. This is called fractal, when the inside is from the outside. So star tetrahedron is cubic in nature, but when we nest the cube within the cube, we keep evolving to what's called, we keep doubling from 8, 16, 32. When we get to 512 cells, we form the torus. And that's explosion, and this is the implosion here. So that became your mouth, and this became your anus. So this is the in and the out, the 2 directions of creation. But the primal geometry was the torus, which is what you were. So this is why I'm talking about the counter-rotating fields. So one spiral going in and one spiral going out. So they're the 2 directions, which is also observed within the star tetrahedral field that I'm coming up to now. So just take a note of the torus energy, because this is the fundamental form of creation. It's a 4th dimensional sphere. So the part 3, the reason why I'm calling this the diamond light body is that we want to know what's inside the tetrahedron. If we was to peel off these 8 tetrahedron, what's the central geometry inside there? So when you're standing in your Merkaba field, the male is facing the upward tetra on the edge, and the woman is facing the downward triangle, because that's their symbols. So that's called the orientation. And like I said, it's a tantric symbol. The upward and the downward triangle form the Star of David. It's a male and female union of balance and harmony. And we can see that when 2 people meet, the fields coalesce and there's energy coming from the heart. Because what I was going to say about the Taurus is that after the Taurus forms, we were the Taurus, the first organ to form in your body was the human heart. So we're looking at the tetrahedron. So when you meditate, you know that the body forms a tetrahedron, and that the geometry inside a tetrahedron is the octahedron here. So this is the geometry I want to show you. That's the octahedron, that what we call the diamond light body. It's inside the fundamental tetrahedron. So we get our students in the 108 Academy to draw this with string inside geometries. We see Leonardo drew the octahedron inside the star tetrahedron, because this is the fundamental form. So you can see here that this is a natural crystal. This diamond light body is actually a crystalline field that we're actually resonating to. So I'm calling it, and it's the geometry, that's what's inside the cube. So the cube opens up and reveals its jewel, which is the negative space. So that's how the diamond light body fits naturally inside the geometry of the cube. It's the fundamental form. So here's the 8 tetra being peeled off the star tetra. You take off these 8 tetra and it reveals the diamond. So when we're doing our Merkaba meditation, we need to focus on our heart. The heart is the center of our being. We visualize a diamond light body that protects you from energy. If people are throwing back negative energy at you, it's called the law of boomerang, the return to center. No one can affect your field because you're in your center, you're in your heart. And literally the octahedron is in all the 5 platonic solids. So you can take any one shape and it makes all 5 platonic solids. So even the icosahedron, if you're meditating inside of your icosahedron, inside this shape is the dodeca, and inside the dodeca is the octahedron and the cube. So all these geometries of the 5 platonic solids. So I like to think that any shape that you resonate to, like this polyhedron, where these 2 light beings are focused on, we can use any geometry to travel with, so long as you are in your heart. That's really, unless we're breathing into our heart, you won't go anywhere. It doesn't matter how much knowledge you have or how much you want to spin. You've got to be in your octahedral field. So this exists at the level of the atom or the universe. We call that scale invariance. That means size doesn't matter. The fractal is the small and the large. That permits entry and exit into the many worlds. So when you sit in your Merkaba, always feel focused upon your diamond light body, this geometrical field. So, and all you need to do is breathe into your heart and fill your field with light. This is called spherical breathing, spherical mind. Just know that you're attuning to the living mathematics of nature. Always think of the pine cone, the sunflower. Stay focused on nature, so that your field will naturally spin. When you're in pure thoughts, your thoughts will be amplified by this geometry. So you don't need to do anything but just to breathe. Just know the point above you is called the soul star, and the point below you is called the earth star, and they're in harmony. And so that's why the priests, the ancient Jewish priests, they wore the breastplate with 12 crystals, because they had a frequency or a resonance. So it's on their heart chakra. And so no priest was allowed to carry the Ark of the Covenant, which you know is a Tesla coil. This is supreme technology that was hidden from the normal people. So unless you were in a pure heart with pure thought, you could not touch this technology, this spiritual technology. So the key at our current level of initiation is to connect with your soul star above, your earth star, and just remain in the center. So I call that spherical mind. And the key, as you know, is to just give gratitude for all that we have, for all who we are. So you can see that I have so much information I'd like to share with you on sacred geometry, on the Merkaba. So I have put together many hours of e-courses where you can access all this knowledge. So a lot of people are talking about where do I start? So this is your best place to start. It's called the Sacred Geometry Beginner's Guide, and it's full of information on many topics. And I've put together 29 lessons, and the amount of time is 12 hours. And what we've done is we've pre-recorded these classes so that you can have a lifetime access. And a lot of the topics include circle of life, creation of life, seed of life, egg of life, fruit of life, flower of life. You can see that there's a cohesion, a resonance between all the topics, the tree of life. We talk about Pythagoras and all the ancient masters. Normally all this knowledge, this total value is valued at $1,008. And in this course, I like to make sure you have all the workbooks. So I've put 6 essential workbooks together as ebooks. They're normally valued at $138. And I've embedded this recording of this webinar that we're doing right now, so you get access to this, so you can stop and start at your own place and re-watch all this information again. I get to also have one-on-one chats with whoever's interested in asking questions. I also like to give a certificate of completion to show that you've actually spent the time to go through this knowledge. And just as another bonus, I've also included the best of all our social media posts that I've done over the last 1.5 years. But because you're tuned in and you're appreciating this knowledge, I'd like to give it to you at half price. So so now it's available for $275. That's a 70% discount, and it's only for a limited time. I get asked many questions from around the world. Yasmin says, I don't have time, but I really want to learn. Yasmin, we do offer lifetime access, and the lessons are pre-recorded, which means you can enjoy this at your own pace. And so the link, you just click on the link below. And Jonathan from Canada says, I'm not good at maths. Will this be too advanced for me? I always tell people there's no prerequisites to join, because this is the fundamentals of sacred geometry. It's suitable for all people. And the last question from Louise, she says, can I talk to you inside the course? Yes, you can comment on any video, and I'm actively answering all questions inside the forum. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I always get excited when I share my knowledge on any form of sacred geometry, because this knowledge is in ourselves. We actually already know all this material, but somehow along the line we forgot this knowledge. So the best thing we can do is to tune into the natural frequency of the earth, make time every day just to sit and be in stillness, to breathe in, to breathe out. This is about remembering who we are. In this way we're connecting to our chariot of light, our Merkaba. And in another way of expressing it, this is our geometry of love, recognizing that you are a forever evolving soul star. You are a bridge between the many worlds. Thank you for your time.